And before I start on chapter 37, I want to tell you a little bit about that, writing that last part. And it was the shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept. And it was that thought that came to mind when I wrote that. Jesus wept because he loved Lazarus and he heard that Lazarus had died. And this is a man that can bring people back from the dead. And still he cried for Lazarus. He wept. And I thought about how powerful that love he must have had for Lazarus. That must have been his boy, man. He must have loved that man. And it wasn't until later that I made the connection that Lazarus came back from the dead. Chapter 37. Days went by, and even though Michelle was heavily sedated, she still wasn't completely pain-free. The hospice staff still had to change her bedding and the dressing on her arm, and whenever they moved her, she would cry out in pain, even though she was unconscious. I had them start an IV on her so she could at least get some fluids. But without nutrition, she was just slowly fading away in front of us. There had to be something we could do. Had to be. In despair, I just fell to my knees at Michelle's bedside, pleading to God. With all my heart and soul, I prayed to him. Please, please, Father, give us a miracle. Don't let my wife die like this. She deserves better. She loves you and I love you. Please help us, Father God. I'm begging you. Please give us a miracle. And I was on my knees, begging God for mercy at my wife's bedside. And God heard my desperate prayers for a miracle and answered them. It's crazy. On the inner side of both of my forearms are scars. Matching scars. Can you see that? And I got one on this arm too. Now what those are is scars from where I tore the bicep tendon in each arm. Not at the same time either. And they had to reattach it. I tore the exact same tendon in each arm 2 years apart. Rare injuries, but I did it twice. And I had my arms out in front of me, praying to God when he spoke to me, right? And I noticed my scars. During both surgeries, they gave me a nerve block. And each time it left the arm completely without any sensation for days. Couldn't feel anything. Couldn't move it, nothing. When I saw these scars, I thought of those nerve blocks. And it occurred to me that nerve blocks would completely take the pain away in Michelle's arm. If hospice could make it happen, we could have her back. And I discussed it with the hospice medical director, Dr. Wisman, and she thought it was a good idea. And she actually called in a favor from a colleague of hers, Dr. Maslin Doost, who is an anesthesiologist. And he came to Michelle's bedside and he performed ultrasound-guided nerve blocks using chemicals that would block nerve conduction for longer than just a few days, months, as he explained it to us. So just so you know, the nerves are inside of a tunnel, right? There's like a sheath, and you can use something like ether or something like that. That as long as the sheath stays intact, the nerve will regrow inside that sheath. So that's what he did. He used a stronger chemical that I don't know exactly what he used, but it doesn't destroy the sheath. It leaves that intact. So it destroys the nerve inside of it, a portion of it. And like I said, it's ultrasound guided. They go in with a needle, and using the right reagents, it will leave the sheath intact, but it will kill the nerve cell inside the sheath, and the nerves will keep growing. They'll come back. They'll grow back. So as long as that tunnel, that sheath is still intact, you can regain nerve conduction. So the procedure he used would last for months. So that was good. That was good as far as we were concerned. Because anyhow, it took about 10 minutes altogether to do it. And I helped him position Michelle while he injected the nerve blocks. He had to put a couple of them in. And I had to place her on her right side, which that was her good side, right? For a couple minutes while he injected one of the nerve blocks. He did two, one right up here and then one from the back. And when I moved her, she cried out in pain from the movement, right? And it broke my heart, man. It broke my heart. But I knew from my own experience it was going to be worth it. And she was still in pain at this point, even though she was still heavily medicated, unconscious. But she was still in pain because they had to change her sheets and they had to change her dressings. And that took some time. It took a while to do. It wasn't like just boom, 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 done. It took a couple minutes. And I knew it was just as painful. It took just as long. And sometimes for the dressings, it took even longer. Depending on who was doing it, right? And a couple minutes of pain would be a small price to pay to help my wife finally be rid of that mountain of pain. As Dr. Muslim Deuce injected the nerve blocks, I prayed again to God, to the Almighty, to our merciful and compassionate Father. I said, please hear my desperate prayer, Lord. Please hear me as I cry out to you. I'm begging you, our loving Father, take this great mountain of pain from your child, Michelle. Take it away from her. Toss it into the sea forever. Shortly after the procedure was done, Dr. Wisman started titrating down Michelle's pain medicine. 8 hours later, Michelle was fully conscious. And the pain in her arm was completely gone. God had heard my prayers, and He answered. He had given us back our precious Michelle. And she had no sensation in her left arm, and the nerve blocks effectively paralyzed it, as I knew they would. But she had no use of the arm before, and for the first time in many months, her eyebrows weren't furrowed, and the muscles of her face were relaxed and not grimaced in pain. Thank you, Almighty Father. God bless you, Dr. Wisman and Dr. Muslim Deuce. Michelle was starving, and she started chugging those little Ensure milkshakes just as fast as I could bring them to her. And I had to explain to her what happened because she didn't know. I told her how I thought we'd never talk to her again. She looked at me real serious. She said, what was that like for you? And I cried and laughed at the same time. And I said, it was scary, baby. I said, I was devastated. It was terrifying. Tears welled up in her eyes. And she said, I bet it was. Thank you for never giving up on me. And I never will. Not even in death, my love. God showed me He works miracles. And I know that love is the most powerful miracle working magic of all. God works in mysterious ways too. Injuring myself and tearing my bicep tendons sure didn't seem like good things when they happened to me. But they turned out to be the biggest blessings of my life. Because for the rest of my wife's days on earth in the flesh, she would feel no more pain in that arm. Now, to facilitate this miracle, God gave me not one, but 2 identical scars. One on each arm, so I couldn't miss them, right? But I almost did miss them. See, these scars have been right there on the inner side of my forearms the whole time. I'm so used to them now, I barely even notice them. And at home, when I'm praying, my normal prayer position, I pray like this, right? But in hospice, the hospital beds are tall. And with that tall hospice bed, my hands were up here like this on my forehead. And the inner side of my forearms were staring me right in the face. Now, if I would have missed those scars, they'd just be injuries instead of blessings. And Michelle would have died in a 4th floor hospice room at St. Joseph East in Lexington. Still in frequent and intense pain. And without anybody ever speaking with her again. God had put everything in place for us to receive a miracle. But I had to be down on my knees praying to get it.